All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 1 hour live webinar session brought to you by kcla.com. As you can see on the screen, we have two very handsome gentlemen that is joining us live with us today. So the first one is actually my boss, Casey. So not too sure where he is logging from. Is it Malaysia that you are logging from, or is it from Taiwan?
Malaysia.
It's
It's
from
Malaysia.
Taipei. Malaysia.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
flying back
So
today.
oh, flying back today. So
Yeah.
Casey, he is here today in Malaysia. All right. So a rare treat. And the next one is our external, not so external kind of a speaker today because he is also the chief trainer of Invest Foreign Shares. So on the screen, you can actually see this is one of his masterpiece, which is Invest in Foreign Shares. This is the book, but he has a course on uh invest foreign shares. All right. So he's the chief trainer of that. And today we're going to talk about copper. So yeah, I mean to say copper is a very versatile material, um, raw material. Although I mean to say we don't value it as much as gold and silver and platinum, but then copper has a lot of industrial uses and it is actually getting more important today as we are moving into the digital economy. All right. So today, I believe that our speaker for today, PC, will be diving in deep into copper. All right. Now, there are two house rules to adhere to when it comes to this webinar. The first one is that if you guys have any questions to ask, type in your questions in the Q&A box. And of course, if you'd like to interact with us, just feel free to put your comments in the chat box. So comments, chat box, questions, Q&A box. And with that, I'm going to just pass the control to PC. So PC, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. Thank you all who are logging in. But first, the disclaimer, whatever we share here is our opinion. We are not financial advisors. Nothing we share here is meant to be a financial advice. And if you need to make any investment decision, please do your own due diligence. So today we want to talk about copper. Now, copper has ignited a frenzy among major investment banks, with many of them calling copper to rise quite spectacularly in the coming decade. And suddenly, everyone is talking about copper. And therefore, the topic today is to dwell into the narrative that copper is the new gold. So we will touch on several points. One is the applications of copper, role of copper in the new energy economy, global supply and demand, how geopolitics and geoeconomy weigh on copper, analyst projection on the price of copper, and how you can invest in copper. So let's look at the applications of copper. Now, a lot of us are familiar with copper because it's used in electronics, it's used in construction, mainly because a lot of our plumbing and wiring are actually using copper. So that is why majority of the application is still in equipment manufacturing, okay? And this include electronics and other high-end equipment, okay, where it is 32%, 28% in building construction, infrastructure is 16%, and transportation is 12%, and industrial at 12%. So why is copper important? Now, it has excellent electrical conductivity, second only to silver, very good thermal conductivity, and therefore is used in heat exchangers. Corrosion resistant, particularly in water and seawater applications, ductile and can be bent relatively easily. Antimicrobial, which can be very useful in water conveyance, as well as in medical applications to protect the health of patients. So you can see that it is widely used across different economic sectors. And therefore, sometimes analysts or investors who want to have an indication of the performance of the economy, they will often refer to copper. If let's say copper price is down, it means that economy is slowing down. But if let's say copper price is going up, it means that the economy is growing. And therefore, copper is sometimes referred to as having a doctorate in the economy, and analysts sometimes coin the term Dr. Copper as an indicator of the global economy. So, but recent development of the renewable industry, the introduction and escalation of EVs, and the revolution in the AI platforms have actually changed how copper is used. And over the next decade, a lot of the percentages you see here would actually be a bit more different. So let's look at how individually copper is used in selective industries. Now, in electronics, copper is widely used in electronics as it has excellent electrical conductivity and allows currents to be carried on small cross sections of copper compared to aluminium, allowing less bulk to be used and components to be smaller. In architecture, copper is used in architecture as an aesthetically striking appearance. It has been used for roofing and wall cladding, as well as gutters and rainwater dropouts. Plumbing, copper tubing is used widely for domestic water piping in household due to its very good corrosion resistance. Transportation, copper is used extensively in modern vehicles due to the amount of electrical cabling used for complex electronics. As electric vehicles grow in market share, increasing amounts of copper are used for elements such as electric motors. This is due to copper's excellent electrical conductivity, second only to silver. Now, actually, it's much more than that. If you have seen videos of people who attended the recent Beijing Auto Show, you can see that electric vehicles are no longer the electric vehicles of a decade ago. Right now, the entire vehicle has become an electronic device. Okay, it's not only a mode of transport, but an electronic device. Inside that vehicle, there are multiple applications. Okay, and a lot of things are being automated, and there's a lot of interactivity of the vehicle with the driver's home and such. So that is why the evolution of the electric vehicle is fast changing the dynamics of how a vehicle is being treated. And for a lot of passenger vehicles, it has become right now more of a device, okay, than a transportation vehicle. And in renewable energy, copper is used within the renewable energy market in a number of ways. For instance, wind turbines use copper. Within the generating turbines, solar photovoltaic panels also require copper for connections and cabling. And the renewable energy is going to gather pace in the development of nuclear power as well. Overall, there are right now in the process of construction, in proposal, and in plans of a build out of another 400 plus nuclear reactors. And the amount of copper used, okay, will also increase dramatically, not only in the normal renewables of solar and wind. So in medical equipment, copper is used as a coating on medical equipment due to its antibacterial properties. In this way, it reduces the risk of infection in patients. Electrical wiring, copper is used widely for electrical wiring due to its excellent electrical conductivity. The coinage, copper is historically been in coins for a number of reasons. It is malleable and therefore easily stamped, but still durable enough to survive in circulation. It also has antimicrobial antimicrobial properties, and corrosion resistant. I still have a 1920 King George copper coin. Okay, that's how lasting they are. And one of the thing is that previously copper is seen as money. Okay, it is in coins, normally the 1 cent coin. But as the mineral resources is being diverted to other industry, a lot of coins no longer signify money nowadays. Last time it used to be real money. For example, you have silver coins, gold coins, and copper coins. But right now, all we have is a combination of alloys that is used as coin. So therefore, real money is still preside in the traditional gold, silver, and copper. And industrial machinery. Copper is used in a variety of ways in industrial equipment with services such as copper die casting. And apart from electrical applications such as motors and cabling, it is also used in heat exchangers such as refrigeration condensers. It may also be applied in particular chemical resistance. So these are the uses of copper. Let's look at role of copper in the new economy, because this is where it departs from the traditional use of copper, which we highlighted earlier. And the new economy is what that will drive copper to greater demand, and in the process, its price. So according to the net zero climate.org, the international consensus that in order to prevent the worst damages, global net human cost emission of carbon dioxide need to fall by 45% from 2010 levels. By 2030, reaching net zero around 2050. So between 2010 and 2030, the CO2 emission need to be cut down by 45%. And by 2050, we need to achieve net zero. So recently, I think whether it's global warming is quite debatable. Okay, there are both sides of the story, but generally the cities tend to have higher temperature because of lack of vegetation and overdevelopment. But there are other areas that are also suffering from severe cold. And in India recently, temperatures spiked above 50 degrees Celsius. And a lot of people are actually in a crisis because lack of water. So, but whatever the narrative, since it is the official narrative that is promoted, okay, and the transition from fuel to electric vehicles to renewable energy, whether it's wind, solar, or nuclear, and energy efficient buildings and cities and smart infrastructure will be in demand, because it is a target that many governments set. So invariably, companies, the government agencies need to comply in achieving such standards. So this is a chart from Visual Capitalist. Okay, they did a comparison between a smaller car, okay, between a Volkswagen Golf and a Chevy Bolt. And they found out that there is 80% more copper in an EV than in an ICE. ICE means internal combustion engine, which is driven by normal petrol. So, but this comparison is a bit dated, because recent development of EVs, as I have mentioned, it has more interactivity within the vehicle itself and a lot more connectivity, and therefore the demand is actually much higher. But this goes to show that even in a small vehicle, okay, it's already 80% more copper. And if we look at the International Copper Association, the copper content among a spectrum of EVs is as following. Okay, electric bus approximately has around 224 to 369 kg of copper per vehicle. And a lot of electric buses are now being used widely in the world, and it has helped to reduce emission within a lot of within a number of cities. So electric vehicle approximately have 83 kg of copper per vehicle, and plug-in hybrid electric vehicle approximately 60 kg of copper per vehicle, and hybrid electric vehicle approximately 39 kg of copper per vehicle. So even, you know, those hybrid, they still have substantial amount of copper. Of course, electric vehicle has the most copper. So then the other is in battery usage. Now, according to the International Copper Association, the copper content in a battery is as following. Now, the estimate is for every kilowatt hour of lithium-ion battery, there is 1.1 to 1.2 kg of copper. And in charging stations, it contains 0.7 kg of copper for a 3.3 kilowatt charger and 8 kg of copper for 200 kilowatt charger. So fully electric buses contain 129 to 292 of copper in their batteries, depending on the battery size. Pure electric vehicles have a battery pack containing 40 kg of copper. So you can see that the most of the copper goes into the battery. Okay. Now, this is the battery demand by ID Tech X. And it forecast shows that the annual demand for battery storage in e-mobility and stationary storage will grow from 0.1 terawatt hour in 2019 to 3.2 terawatt hour by 2029. And if you look at it, it is 32 times more. Okay, so that is why we are seeing a parabolic chart here. And batteries will predominantly be deployed in e-mobility applications, especially in cars, trucks, and vans. Okay, so you can see that majority of it eventually will be on trucks and vans. Okay, and cars as well. Buses will grow, but at a smaller scale. But in terms of cars and trucks and vans, it will be much higher. So even right now, in terms of logistics, in the port, in the intelligent ports, if you can, you know, in China, there are a lot of intelligent ports. A lot of the logistics is handled unmanned, okay? And the containers move in and out of the port through trucks that are unmanned and run on battery. And every port also have a station where they can exchange batteries. So as the development of more smart ports being done in multiple cities, then even the logistics sector will see huge demand of copper. And this is the copper demand that is slightly different from the earlier chart. Okay, it forecasts the energy storage in mobility and stationary storage applications. And the annual demand of copper will rise to 2.3 million tons by 2029. Just now are mobility, and these are stationary storage applications. Okay, you can see that here, the stationary energy storage, despite a lot of hype about it, energy storage is mostly found in solar farms, okay, where the electricity is generated and it's stored in massive batteries. Okay, but the main applications you can see here is still cars, trucks, and vans, which will form the bulk of the energy storage. Okay, and the total demand for energy storage over the next decade will total just over 9 million tons by 2029. And this is another forecast by the International Copper Association. So you can see that in the forecast, there are combination of some that are very conservative and some that is based on a bigger cycle. Okay, so that is why sometimes a lot of companies, when they do this kind of projection, they will have the average, and they have the best case, and they have the low case. Okay, but that goes to show that the demand for copper is going to continue to expand. So let's look at copper in solar technology. Now, there are approximately 5.5 tons of copper used per megawatt in solar farms. Okay, it will be used in heat exchangers, wiring, and cabling. And the annual solar PV installation by region expectation from 2022 to 2033. You can see that the installation is not showing any dramatical rises, but it's steadily within the 400 plus gigawatt every year. Okay, and predominantly is driven by Asia Pacific. And the only country that is generating a lot of solar power is China. The amount of renewable energy that China generates, okay, is more than the rest of the countries combined. Okay, that is how much renewable energy China is developing. And one of the main reasons is because China still have reliance on fossil fuel. It is still importing gas from the Middle East and oil from the Middle East as well as from Russia. But one of the key things is to allow China to roll out its electrification of its infrastructure, because the development of a lot of unmanned transportation system, it requires much more energy. And in order to do that, you know, it must have an enormous source of energy. So previously, when we did the session on nuclear power, I did stress that China will actually, between 2024 to 2035, China will actually build out about 150 nuclear reactors. Okay, so that itself is one of those renewable energy. And the other is actually wind and solar. So, and according to Wood Mackenzie, it expects an additional 5,000 gigawatt to be installed from 2023 to 2033. So since 1 megawatt needs 5.5 tons of copper, 4,652 gigawatt will be equivalent of 27.88 million tons of copper. So why I use 4,652 instead of 5,009? Because I took the benchmark from 2024, not from 2022 and 2020, because we are already past that. So that means moving forward, over the next 9 years, we will still require 27.88 million tons of copper just for solar farms only. And if we look at copper in wind farms, there are 4.7 tons of copper for every 3 megawatts of wind energy or turbine, okay, where 53% is used in cabling and wiring. Turbine power generation is 24%, 4% transformer, and 19% turbine transformer. So that is the breakdown. So AG Market Intelligence forecasts 680 gigawatt of new capacity in the next 5 years from 2023 to 2027, representing 136 gigawatt per year. An additional 143 gigawatt is expected by the end of the decade. So total till 2030 is 823 gigawatt. Since standard 3 megawatt turbine would require 4.7 tons of copper, 1 megawatt is 1.57 tons. 823 gigawatt would require 3.87 million tons of copper. And this falls short of the 2 terawatt required to reach net carbon zero by 2050. So we are still a bit behind in terms of increasing the amount of renewables in order to meet the 2050 target. And what does this imply? It means that as we near towards that target and there is not enough capacity reached, there will be huge investment into the sector to try to catch up to what has been lacking over the last few years. Now, if that happens, then there will be a sudden surge in demand for copper because every country wants to meet that target closer to 2050. And with not enough supply of copper, the only thing that will go up will be the price of copper. So this is a chart showing this, okay? So there is a huge shortfall here. You can see that over the next few years, if let's say this trend continues, there will be a shortfall, okay? So imagine that as countries realize that they are behind that curve, what they will do, they will increase their spending in renewables. And when that happens, suddenly everyone will be rushing towards development for wind farms and, and such. So, and because of that, and insufficient copper, because copper is also being used in other areas, not just in wind farm. So everyone will suddenly be competing, okay, to get more copper in order to meet their net carbon zero target by 2050. So let's look at global supply and demand. And according to Sprott, which is a global investment management company, supply of copper is already in deficit, and by 2050, the deficit in supply will be more than 50%. Okay. This is due to the following: transition towards net zero carbon by 2050, electrification of the infrastructure and the development of smart cities, explosive demand for data centers, which are needed to power the AI industry, population growth, which will fuel the demand for energy, which is the grid, basic infrastructure, utilities and transport, housing, and electronics. So a lot of people are just benchmarking against the kind of demand to meet net carbon zero. Okay, but we should not forget that there's population growth as well. And population growth, currently, the most dynamic places in population growth are actually in Latin America, Africa, and Southeast Asia. So all these are mainly developing economies. And when they are developing economies, the demand for energy will be even greater. Okay. And because of that, there's a lot of growth. And as I mentioned earlier, copper is used in all sectors of the economy. So that is why those developing economies will by themselves create another demand for copper in the more mundane use: electronics, housing, infrastructure, and electricity grid. So that is why it's going to drive another demand outside of the demand for renewables. Now, a lot of people would think that data centers are important, okay, not only for storage and to power the AI industry, but recent studies show that in order to achieve a full-fledged AI-driven economy, the amount of data centers in the world right now is not enough. It has to grow multiple times bigger because as the AI industry develops, there will be more demand for data centers. Okay, and data centers by themselves demand a lot of copper. Okay, not only in terms of the computers that are housed. Okay, there's a whole new demand for the grid, electricity grid. There's a whole new demand for the cooling of the data centers because it generates tremendous amount of heat. So all this actually add on to the demand for copper. So why is it at risk? Now, copper is naturally abundant on Earth, but extracting the metal at the pace necessary for an electrified economy would be a challenge. The timeline for bringing a copper mine from discovery to production is lengthy, averaging about 16 years. Now, it can be much lower if, let's say, the company has an existing mining facility in an area and nearby they discovered new deposit of copper, then that would make it shorter. Okay, but if let's say it's from a green field, from discovery to the permitting to the construction and finally to commissioning and production is a very lengthy period. So not to forget, we need to achieve a lot of all these net carbon zero, powering the AI within a few short span of years. And therefore, the mines, when they come into production, will be much further down the road. And by that time, demand for reaching 2050 net zero carbon will be even more taxing on the demand. So currently, for example, there is a report that I read recently that in order to meet all the demands of electricity, okay, not just net carbon zero, but AI, electrification of infrastructure, there is a need for 6 large copper mine to be discovered every 1 year, okay, over the next decade. That means 60 high-grade copper mines need to be discovered and start operating soon in order to meet that kind of demand. So, but right now, because if you look at it, if you look at the performance of a lot of the mining index in the stock market, they are at their lowest level in decades. So which means investment money is not going into the mining sector. Where is the investment money going into? You know, going to the into those semiconductor. Okay, but if let's say no investment is done in the mining sector, then how much semiconductor that is capable of being generated every year will not be able to be applied in the industry because there is a lack of copper. Okay, so as much as the chips can be produced, how are the data centers going to be run? So that means that it will create a huge demand where supply will be not enough. So therefore, the only determinant will be the price. So top producers like Chile and Peru are facing strikes and protests, along with declining ore grades. Okay, so Chile, for example, recently reported that their copper production dropped, and Chile is one of the global major producers of copper. This is because over the past decades, now copper mines can actually be mined for a very long time, okay, but over the past decades, in the economy of scale, a lot of miners actually go for the good grades first, because that's how they can generate huge cash flow, okay, to meet their ROI. So when the good grades are gone, okay, they need to mine deeper. And sometimes mining deeper doesn't mean a continuation of further good grades. It could also mean a deterioration in grades. So if the grade deteriorates for the worse, then that means that the amount of copper that is pulled out of the earth would be much lesser. Okay, and Russia ranked 7th in the copper production, but faces expected decline in production due to the ongoing war in Ukraine. Not only that, there are a lot of multiple sanctions against Russia, so the incentive to produce is also down because it's not going for the export market. So Russia will produce only enough to meet its own demand or perhaps export to friendly countries. Okay, and another external producer that can actually help in meeting the supply challenge is now out of the scenario. So the other thing is that the increasing adoption of carbon-free technology only highlighted copper's significance, okay, especially in renewables and in EVs. So Codelco, world largest producer, saw production fell 10.1% in March. Glencore's copper production fell 2% in Q4 2023 and has been declining for more than 4 years. Antofagasta, a major producer in Chile, saw production falling 11% year-on-year in Q1 2024. Anglo-American lowered 2024 output by 210 tons to 270,000 tons, okay, from 210K to 270K in supply output. So global copper inventories are close to 30-year lows. So you can see that the copper balance, okay, has been in decline, okay. When this happens, the only thing that can drive up the production of copper will be a higher price of copper to incentivize miners to expand their mine more aggressively, and also encourage new mining companies or startups to venture out in trying to explore other opportunities for copper. So when the money is not coming in and the price is not enough, mining companies will often look at their own balance sheet, okay, they would want to generate profit. But if, let's say, the price is not good enough, they will mine, okay, sometimes they will just mine enough to stay afloat, or as long as they are generating profit, the investment that's required to build out new mines doesn't meet the kind of ROI, they would rather stay on profit. And the other thing is that the greenfields exploration companies, they don't even have the kind of investment money, okay, to start, and therefore sometimes they started on something, but then it's held suspended, okay. And some mines which consistently have falling profits, what they do, they eventually put it under care and maintenance, okay, not going to produce anymore, because every ton of rock we produce, we suffer a loss. So that is why the whole industry is facing a constraint in production, because money is not coming in and the price of copper does not provide that kind of incentive for them to produce or expand their mine operations. So if you look at the world's largest copper mine, you can see that its production, this is over 3 decades. Okay, you can see that its production is trending down. And even worse, it could trend down more because the company is facing a debt challenge as well. Because as the mine production returns very poor grade, but it needs to deepen its production they need to mine deeper. It incurs tremendous cost. So a lot of it is through debt financing. So when that happens, you already spent going deeper into the mine, but then the grades are not good enough, okay, to generate that kind of return. Then a company could be saddled with debt and reducing revenue, and that could be a recipe for disaster. So if we look at the top countries, top 10 in producing copper, Chile ranks number 1, Democratic Republic of Congo or DRC ranks number 2, Peru, China, United States, Russia, Indonesia, Australia, Zambia, Mexico, and other countries constitute the 4,900 million tons, okay? Sorry, 4.9 million tons, not 4,900. So 4.9 million tons are from the remaining countries. But interestingly, what Chile is facing is low grades. Peru is facing civil unrest. Russia is facing sanctions. Okay, and China is hardly exporting. China, in fact, is stockpiling copper. Okay, a lot of the copper is being used internally in China. Okay, and Indonesia is something we should watch out, because Indonesia will likely by the end of this year would actually ban the export of copper. Why is Indonesia banning the sale of copper via export? Is because Indonesia wants to develop its entire ecosystem of the new economy. Okay, that means development of batteries, development of EVs, and the electrification of its own infrastructure. And that is why Indonesia has decided that copper is a very critical mineral for the country to achieve these objectives. And that's why by the end of this year, Indonesia will likely enforce a ban on the export of copper. By right, it's supposed to be middle of this year, but I think they delay it by another 6 months. And that's how Indonesia will actually achieve its new economy development. Okay, and already major companies like CATL, BYD are actually investing in Indonesia, because if Indonesia is not exporting its copper, CATL can always develop a battery factory, okay, and benefit Indonesia in the process. But then that battery can be also exported to other regions which are also building their own EVs to be able to be used in conjunction with the expansion of Chinese EVs across the region. Thailand is actually having BYD build manufacturing plant in Thailand, and elsewhere. BYD is also into Latin America, and they are now moving to Middle East. So whereas Europe and the US may impose restrictions on Chinese EVs, but Chinese EVs are already gathering momentum in Southeast Asia and in Latin America, in Middle East, and right now making its way towards Africa. So if we look at the global LME copper stocks versus copper price, okay, you can see that the copper stocks have been declining. Okay, if we look at here, okay, drawing a line across, but that decline is initially is not shown as being very damaging, okay, because the price of copper is still in this region of consolidating. But as soon as it reaches a certain threshold, you can see that the price of copper make a huge jump. And this will likely continue, mainly because, as I mentioned, insufficient supply. So a new study by the Oricon Group, okay, they put it that the demand outpaces what Sprott anticipated. Okay, now Sprott anticipated is going to be a 50% deficit. But if you look at here, Oregon growth shows that between 23 to 2050, from 26 million tons, it will shoot up to 53 million tons. Remember, Sprott say that there's going to be a 50% shortfall. Right now, they are forecasting a 100% shortfall. Okay, so in that the demand, okay, will actually be much higher. Okay, more than what Sprott projected, because Sprott was saying that the deficit will be 50%. Okay, right now here the deficit is double of what is produced. Okay, in 2020, between 2023 to 2050. Okay, now this anticipates that the global supply of copper is expected to face a supply gap of nearly 10 million tons within the next 10 years. So the only thing that can offset this again is the price of copper. So this run up, you can see that the spike is more parabolic as we go into 2050, and it fits the narrative that countries and government agencies will have to work doubly hard, okay, in order to meet the net zero carbon transition. Okay, right now they are still, more involved in geopolitics, more involved in the protectionist kind of economy. Okay, but when the supply becomes a problem, then that's when everyone would try to rush into meeting that objective of net carbon zero, and that would drive the price of copper even higher. So now we look at how geopolitics and geoeconomy weigh on copper. Now, copper is seen as a critical mineral and strategic asset as the supply deficit deepens. And here are some examples what could happen. And countries might restrict sale of copper to adversaries and competitors. Some countries could be sanctioned from getting access to the mineral based on geopolitical preference. Companies which have already invested in the mine development may be coerced to leave, similarly like what Canada did to Chinese companies with regard to lithium. And just today, there's news that Australia is asking Chinese companies to divest their investment from a rare earth mineral company. So lithium, rare earth, copper could be coming over the next few years because suddenly there's not enough supply, okay, in order to meet the kind of challenges that are evolving in the economy. And I think the greatest challenge would be in terms of data centers, because if let's say there's not going to be enough data centers, the rollout of AI is going to be reduced. In order for AI to scale up the addressable market, when it is in the billions of dollars, huge investment is needed for the data centers. And that itself would require more investment into the security of the supply of energy to these data centers. And therefore, like Microsoft recently, news came out that they are going to relocate or build a data center that is close to a nuclear reactor. And there are rollout of small modular reactors or SMRs into the industrial sector as well as in the data centers, because these are smaller nuclear reactors and therefore they can actually help power a localized industrial sector. So where there is demand for copper with the rollout of nuclear, of course, there's also demand for uranium. So I've talked about uranium in the past as well. And for those who actually follow us, about, I think 2 years ago, and invested in some of the uranium ETFs or stocks, nowadays the gains have, could be easily 2 or 3 times higher. So another thing is that two major countries, okay, the one being China and India, they are stockpiling copper. Okay, by right, copper that is produced is siphoned to the economy, supplied to the economy. But when you have countries that see a geopolitical significance of copper, they start hoarding copper, then that copper is not going to be used, okay? That copper is going to be stored for a worst case scenario. And China is already stockpiling. You can see that China's stockpile of copper is more than its earlier averages. Okay, that goes to show that China is deeply concerned of the change of globalization, where it has become very restricted, and also because of geopolitical tension, which caused it to stockpile copper at an amazing rate. Okay, in fact, in the latest chart, I think just issued a day or two ago, shows that it has actually gone up even higher than this point here. So why China is stockpiling? Because it needs its copper for its industries and high-tech manufacturing, renewable energy expansion, and EVs. So on one hand, China is a top 10 producer. So what China could possibly be doing will be buying from the market for its use, while its own local production is being stockpiled. Okay, so India, on the other hand, has also been stockpiling. Now, one of the major reasons is because India desperately needs to develop its renewable energy as pollution in major cities becomes an issue. Also, India needs copper for its industrialization. So India is not only stockpiling copper. In fact, India has been stockpiling silver at multi-decades high, okay, especially during Q1. So silver, again, is a major component in the electrification of the infrastructure. For example, solar panels would require silver. Electric vehicles will also require silver. And a lot of industrial applications in equipment themselves would require silver. And because another thing is that silver is also money in a certain extent. So it's both a monetary asset as well as an industrial asset. And India in particular, you see here, the stockpiling have actually risen quite steeply. So these two countries are actually pulling the copper away from the global market. And that's why just now you see the LME inventories have been steadily declining. So the other thing is that there's going to be a battle for M&As. Some of the news a month ago, investors expect BHP to leave Anglo-American offer again. Well, BHP decided not to acquire Anglo-American because they're asking too high a price. Okay, but what is interesting is the piece of news that as soon as BHP, which is one of the major mineral producer in the world, okay, indicated their intention to acquire Anglo-American, then Anglo-American rejected, then Glencore studying an approach for Anglo-American. And Glencore is also another major mineral producer. And Anglo-American decided not to sell, so they themselves say that they are eyeing to sell coal, platinum, diamond business to stave off BHP takeover, okay? So that they become focused in copper assets only, and everything else suddenly is no longer important, but copper assets. So if you think about it, if a copper miner itself sees that it is important to divest other assets to fully concentrate on copper, that itself is an indicator of bullishness of where the price of copper would be. And coal is also doing quite well, in fact, okay? And that's why I think Anglo-American might want to sell these assets, because they themselves would want to acquire other copper producing companies. Okay. So what are the analyst price estimates? So BlackRock says 12,000 copper is needed to incentivize new mines. And Goldman Sachs is bullish on copper to $15,000 per ton. Right now, the price of copper is around $10,000 to $11,000 per ton. So if let's say it goes to $15,000 per ton, it would imply a 40 to 45% increase in the price of copper. And billionaire mining magnate Friedman says 15,000 a ton copper needed to spur new mines. Now, Friedland is actually the CEO of Ivanhoe. Many years ago, okay, we already share with our members Ivanhoe Mines. Okay, at that time is $1.72. So I think Ivanhoe Mines today is roughly around $20. So that goes to show how big change can happen if, let's say, a company has a huge deposit and the industry that it is in is facing tremendous shortage of that particular mineral. Okay, another one is uranium. Okay, some of the uranium stock that we shared in 2021, in particular CGN Mining, when we shared with our member, it was 47 cents. Yesterday, CGN Mining was $3 Hong Kong dollars. So that is around 500% just over 4 years. Ivanhoe, in order to reach 1.72 to about $20, takes about 6 years. Okay, so that's why sometimes investment is not like investing in cryptocurrency. Okay, you see 10x or how many x, but cryptocurrencies are very cyclical. Okay, it can come down 20% the next day and so forth. But if you are investing in stocks, if you know the direction of where it's going to be, then it gives you the early start, okay, to able to enjoy greater multiples moving forward. So how to invest in copper? Now there are several ways. One is that you can invest in physical copper, and Sprott will be launching a physical copper trust soon, similarly like what they did with the physical uranium trust. So there are also specific ETFs that cater for base metals, including copper. Some of the ETFs, they include base metal like aluminium, copper, and zinc together. Okay, and zinc actually has gone up. Okay, zinc has actually gone up 33%. That goes to show that inflation is going to keep going up. The Fed, as I've said many times, those who have followed me for the past few years, I have reiterate that the Fed will always lose its battle against inflation, and likelihood minerals will actually go up higher again, because the news I got today was that 63 banks in the US are facing more than $500 billion in mark-to-market losses due to the CRE, commercial real estate implosion in the US. So the only way is to bail out these banks, either through absorption into the much bigger banks, which also require money. And the government, US government, is continuing to spend money, even though the Fed is have already raised the interest rate. But the government continues to spend. Okay, and right now the US government is on course for 3 trillion deficit this year. On top of that, we also have a lot of countries right now not buying US treasuries. Okay, they prefer to buy gold as what China is doing, and some of the Middle East countries are starting to do as well. So that means that the financing for the US government increasingly becomes very difficult. And if let's say that happens, then the the Federal Reserve may have to be a buyer of last resort. But even before that, the US Treasury is already buying back US Treasury. Okay, now this is really something that is quite mind-boggling, because US Treasury issue US Treasury so that it gets the money to buy back US Treasury. Okay, and it's starting at small amount of over $2 billion, but it's going to last for, I think, 2 months. So that itself will be some tens of billions. And that is how the financing of the US government would create more problems. And because of that, there's going to be more debt that's going to be monetized. And because of that, okay, the US dollar would trend down. When the US dollar trend down, there's going to be more minerals that are going to rise in price, because in relation to the US dollar. So that is why, you know, not only copper has shown increase in price, but zinc, aluminum as well. Okay, and gold especially has already identified this problem much earlier. Okay, and gold would likely to trend higher too, because central banks are dumping US treasuries to buy gold. So, okay, going back to copper, there are also specific copper miners ETFs, okay, and there are also specific copper producers. And there are explorers and developers, but they carry a higher risk, and they are subject to dilution, because greenfields explorers, they start off with some capital, but when they use that capital for exploration, if they discover something that is of significance, then they would actually raise money again to expand their footprint in the exploration. And then they will also raise money again to build the resource. So every time in a process, it will actually go towards expanding the resource. So the only thing that can keep this going up is that the mineral price continues to go up. If let's say the mineral price is unattractive, they will discover something, then they would actually wait. Okay, and that means that it takes even a longer time to bring a mine into production. So these are specific areas which you can actually invest in. So Casey and myself, we have developed the IOS program for quite some time. Okay, and here's what we do. Okay, we study global economic, financial, and commodity trends, government's policies, and how they could impact specific industry. That's why we identified uranium very much earlier, to a certain extent copper as well. And because when you understand how government behaves, then you will know what are the specific industries to be in. Okay, and from there we perform case studies on companies which can potentially benefit from such trends. So for example, last year on 21 December, we shared with our members that the time is right to enter the Chinese coal sector, because the Chinese coal stocks are being hammered down, but the US coal stocks are actually at record high levels. Okay, so we saw that kind of discrepancies, and believe that if coal is not performing well, then the US stocks shouldn't be so high either. Then we study the Chinese coal sector, and we realized, hey, you know, it's value for money. So we featured Yancoal, Australia, in our case study when the price was $24.95. And as at June 2024, Yancoal Australia has gained 41.6%, including $1.67 dividend. Similarly, we also shared another coal company called Shugang Resources. And at that time, it was $2.75. Then as of 3rd of June, you know, it has gained 34.9%, including an 18 cents dividend. We also featured, you know, every month we had certain teams, and the coal team started in November. Yeah, we featured Yanguang Energy when it was $13.70, and Yanguang Energy has gained 52.6%, including $1.61 dividend. Now, if you look at it, at $1.61 dividend at a price of $13.70, that is already more than 10% dividend yield. Okay, and nowadays it's very difficult to get even 6 or 7% dividend yield. To get more than 10% is, something that is very rewarding. But this is the best of all. Okay, we shared Kinetic Development in our case study when the price was 47 cents. Now, Kinetic Development is also another co-producer. It got hammered down so badly because it has an accident, not accident. It has the pillars cracking in its underground mine. So production was temporarily halted while they put on the repairs. But then as we explore deeper, it has another 2 coal mines that are going to open in 2025. So we think, this is something that is worthwhile to consider. And Kinetic Development has gained 142%, including 12 cents dividend. Now, if you look at it, 12 cents for 47 cents, what is the percentage? It's 20%, okay? Close to even 30% dividend. So this is how, by identifying trends, we are able to identify specific areas to be in. Then, of course, during the Nasdaq stocks were constantly rising. We realized that US utilities should have some good place to be in. So we featured Next Era Energy, which has combination of renewable, including nuclear energy. When we did the study, the price was $57.50. And as of 3rd of June, Next Era Energy gained 41.8%, including $1.50 dividend. And we highlight in October that Russia is going to face an impending ban from the US in terms of the import of uranium from Russia. So this will actually benefit US producers. So we featured Uranium Energy Corp in our case study when the price was $5.29. And as of 3rd of June, Uranium Energy Corp has gained 35%. So not only that, we also share with our members a weekly newsletter, okay? And then we found another significant gem, okay? That was just a month ago. And we say that, hey, this company has already lost 2/3 of its price from the 2021 uranium high. And 2021 uranium high is just a small percent of the 2007 uranium. So that means it has tremendous opportunity to scale up. The price then was $5.54, and as of 3rd of June, Energy Fuel has gained 26.4%. So in our weekly newsletter, we also highlighted as we study certain things, not only on our twice a month case studies, sharing of certain stocks, but in writing the newsletter, if there are certain things that came out, we would actually put it in. So in our newsletter, we featured CNOOC I think more than a year ago when CNOOC was just about $10 to $11. Right now, CNOOC is closer to $21 and it has paid out almost $2 to $3 dividend. Yeah, so this is what we do with our newsletter. Of course, the newsletter will also tell what is the market, what's the closing market on the week for the US as well as China. A lot of news about Chinese economic indicators and Chinese economic news that will actually give insight. When we talk about Chinese shipbuilding, we also featured another Singapore company, Yangzijiang Shipbuilding. Okay, at that time it was just I think about $1.30 something and so forth. The last time I checked, Yang Zhejiang is about $1.70 something and paid quite a number of dividend as well. Yeah, and of course, then there's WhatsApp. Okay, sometimes there are certain alerts which I will send via WhatsApp. So this is something which I shared in January 2021. Okay, where I sent an alert that's the price of CGN mining was 47 cents. I already made a purchase and I'm still continuing to hold that stock. Okay, and as 3rd of June 2024, CGN mining has gained 544.7%. Okay, that's over a span of 4 years. So WhatsApp, we also share because it's a members area only. So I would share that what I buy and what I sell. Okay, it's not intended to be anyone to follow, but it's also for my own part a disclosure. Okay, so this is what we do, and if you are interested, you can go to www.investforeignshare.com to find out more. Let me share with you the screen.
All right.
Still not seeing screen yet.
No, your
Yeah.
screen is not showing up yet.
Okay, yeah, found it. Yeah, so you can find out more about what we do for over here. Okay, some of the historical trades that I've made, and what we offer, and some testimonial. You know, we have different modules to teach people about different industry. For example, we have modules on risk, we have module on oil and gas, we have modules on mining companies, and then we talk about you know, global economics and all those all through the years, which you can actually access. Okay, so some of the gains we make in you know, we have shared companies that we have shared. Okay, so these are some of the previous histories. So that's what we do. So if you do visit us and have a look at what we offer. Okay, so Q&A.
Yep, it's time for Q&A. And guys, if you have any question for PC Wong, just type in the Q&A box, and we will love to actually address all of your questions in this webinar session. And first and foremost, just want to say a big thank you for your elaborated presentation on copper. So I guess that everyone is still digesting the whole bulk of information, but it's still very, very interesting lah. I mean to say, it's a very good insight on the subject of copper. Okay, so I guess you have reviewed a few things in regards to this question, but I guess you can actually elaborate more. So the first question is by Po Len Poon. So Po Len Poon would like to know, which platform can we invest in copper?
Okay, copper by itself is if you want to invest in copper, sometimes directly, okay, you will be treating it as a commodity investment, and that's through the futures market. Other times you can actually get exposure to copper is through those copper ETFs. And also you can get exposure to copper through the producers, okay, which you can search from Google anywhere, okay, and from those other related ETFs. So direct investment in copper normally is through the futures. But if you have the patience, you can wait for Sprott Physical Copper Trust, and then you can actually invest directly. via a trust into physical copper. So next question.
Okay, David Yong, any copper mining company in China?
There are a few, but normally Chinese mining companies, they do not specifically focus on a single. Normally, they are involved in several types of minerals. So if you Google, you can always search for them in China. Then, of course, you can join our membership, and then we often have features of different type of copper mining companies, including those in China, in Africa, in Australia, US, and Canada. Hope that's answered your question.
All right, so next one, Louis Ko. How do factors like currency fluctuation and trade policies affect the copper market and investment returns? Louis Ko.
Now, for currency, if the US dollar weakens, naturally the price of copper would actually go up. Okay. And if we want to weigh that, if you are buying from a Malaysian point of view, okay, if let's say US dollar drops, the price of copper goes up, the price of the copper stock, the copper producer stock will also go up. But then in terms of the US dollar you pay now and the US dollar you pay that you receive when you sell may be slightly different. But on an overall trend, if the price of copper keeps going up, okay, the forex change is actually not so great. Okay, like I don't see, if let's say if you are Malaysian investing, yeah, I don't see that the Malaysian ringgit would strengthen a lot versus the US dollar if let's say the US dollar decline. That is because the Malaysian ringgit has weakened quite a lot, okay, in recent years. So for example, even when the US dollar was very weak in 2007, 2008, the ringgit then was, if I'm not wrong, yeah, was around close to 3 or close to 2.5 to 3. But subsequently, even when the the US dollar was still less than 100, the ringgit has already weakened to 3 ringgit plus. Okay, so that is why sometimes investing in foreign shares is like a kind of hedging. Okay, for example, if you invest in some Singapore REITs, okay, the Singapore dollar has appreciated against the ringgit from 2 ringgit and 50 cents to 3 ringgit and 50 cents. So it is a form of hedging. And if let's say if you invest in a mineral that in a producer that benefit from a higher price of the mineral, then the trade-off is not going to hurt. Hope that answers the question.
All right. Casey Chong, are there any other alternative metals that can replace copper in those industries that you mentioned with a cheaper or better metal?
I think if let's say there is any cheaper materials, China would be holding another type of material. It will not be holding copper. Okay, it's just that copper is the cheapest right now. Okay, when compared to other minerals. There are of course some early developments, but no matter what, you still require copper. For example, sometimes energy can be relayed via radio frequency. Okay, and that is now being done in China. For example, the charging of cars is done through wireless, via a wireless charging point. And China is developing a massive outer space solar farm that it will actually give, deliver energy 24/7, 365, because it's orbiting, so it has exposure to sunlight. And that is being beamed down to radio frequency as well. So if let's say this kind of technology, no matter what, still require copper, okay? So I don't think there is any cheaper materials right now.
Okay, Connie Kong has a question. She doesn't quite understand the copper price at 10,000, but CFD prices at 464, but some quote at
Okay.
$4 plus. What does it mean?
Okay. This is because of different weightage. Yeah. For example, copper is priced per pound. Okay. So right now is $4.70 per pound. Okay. But 10K copper is actually in tons, which is in metric tons. So that's why you need to work backwards, okay, in that 10K divided by 3,000, 32,000, then you get the price per pound, okay? Sorry, let me go, that math is wrong. Okay, you convert 1 ton into equivalent ounces or equivalent pound, okay? So 10K is equivalent to 10K is, sorry, 1K is equivalent to 2.2 pounds. So if you have 10K divided by 2.2, that would give you $4 plus per pound. So it is because of the pricing mechanism, okay? Elsewhere in the world, people use the metric system, but the pricing that is on the futures is often in pounds or ounces. So that's why there's always some misunderstanding there. So 10K divided by 2,200 pounds easily give you $4 plus already.
I see. Okay, so let's see what other questions. All right. Elaine Ko would like to know, when do you think the copper price will pick up like gold?
Copper price won't scale up the way like gold is, but it will scale up. Right now, the immediate target by the end of 2025 is about 26 is about 15,000 pounds. No one dare to put the price much higher beyond $15,000 per ton. But one specific hedge fund manager got everyone in shock when he predicted that by 2030, after 2030, copper would be $40,000 per ton. So that implies about 4 times. But he is the only one who dared to predict, okay, beyond 2030 to be 4 times the current price. But if we look at gold is now changing. And gold could be much higher depending on the direction of what will come out in the coming months. There are talks that the BRICS nations have already come up with a settlement platform called the mBridge, which will be tokenized, but that token would likely be backed by a combination of gold, some important commodities, as well as the local currencies of the respective countries. So if let's say this mBridge is announced, probably in October of this year, then that means a huge portion of global trade will be outside the US dollar. Now, you don't look at the GDP, that US GDP is how much, EU GDP is how much. But if you think that the collective size of the population of the BRICS nation, China and India is already a third. Then 8 countries have already indicated they would like to join BRICS this year. Okay, one such country is actually Thailand, and other African countries as well, and South American countries. So this bloc is going to grow bigger, and the bigger they grow, the more they would use the Ambridge settlement, and therefore if let's say it's backed by gold can actually rise much faster. Then the other thing is that a lot of central banks governors have already indicated that they may need to revalue gold in order to clean the balance sheet of the central banks. Now, a lot of the central banks right now are actually, their balance sheet have negative equity, because a lot of them, especially in the Western nations, they did a lot of QE. And then when you do QE, the price of the bonds that you buy is much higher than the price of bond now because of the higher interest rate. So they are already underwater with their assets. And if let's say because of the BRICS, a lot of the countries is going to forgo buying US treasuries, then one of the key things to do is when the bond asset devalues, one and only way to bring back the central bank's balance sheet into good slate is to revalue gold much higher. And that value of gold have to wipe clean a lot of the debt. That means gold would be very, very high in order to do so, because the bond market is worth trillions and trillions of dollars. And the other thing is that because no one wants to buy US Treasury because of the long arm of the law, that the US can sanction countries as long as they handle US dollar, and they are subject to seizure of asset like what they did to Russia. No one wants to own Treasury for the sake that the US can seize them, okay? If let's say there's any, in a case of war or any case of disagreement. So people would want to hold gold instead. And that's why central banks buying of gold in Q1 2024 has been the highest ever in history. So central banks are buying more gold. In the US, if no one is buying the treasury, what we have right now is Janet Yellen is already selling treasury to buy back treasury. And eventually, the Fed will have to be the buyer of last resort, because if their bonds are unwanted, the Fed will do QE. So the US is heading towards Japan, where the BOJ, is important to react as the yield of their bonds goes up higher and higher. Because if they do that, the Japanese government will be bankrupt because they cannot serve the interest payment on the bond. So that is why we are entering into a financial mayhem further down the road. And the only way to offset this is potentially a revaluation of gold. And that means gold must need to go up much higher, okay, to balance off what is happening. So hope that's answered the question.
All right. So we have, yep, sorry. I guess for now we have covered all the questions that have been posted in the Q&A box and as well as the chat box. So I guess, yep, that's about it for today's topic on copper. So before we actually leave this online session, Casey, what are we going to do next week?
Next week, we haven't confirmed yet, so yet to be announced, yet to be determined. So we will inform you through the emails, and also if you follow us on the Telegram channel and also Facebook, we will be informing you in the next few days. So I guess today, thanks PC for being here and explaining to us what copper is about and how you can invest in it. And also, if you want to learn more from PC Wong, do consider the program run by PC Wong here at investforeignshare.com. Okay,
Right.
so that's all for today.
Yep.
Yeah,
Let's go
thank you,
for
Casey.
lunch.
Thank you, Ian. And thank you all who are logging in. Hope to see you in our membership timeline. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.